Hello everyone and welcome back to the Horror Hut. Now, I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off I thought it would be a nice idea if everyone can leave a comment and let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the episodes. Right, let's get comfy and relax and let's begin. I was driving home from a long day at work, the rain coming down so hard that it felt like the windshield wipers were barely making a dent in it. It was one of those nights where the roads were empty, the kind of rain that makes you want to just get home and forget about the world. I hadn't seen another car for miles, just the occasional flicker of headlights in the distance or the sound of tires on slick pavement. The road I was on was pretty quiet, with nothing but fields on either side. It was the kind of place where you could feel completely alone, even though you weren't. I'd driven this route countless times before, but tonight, there was something off about it. It started when I noticed headlights behind me. I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, it was dark, the rain was making everything look blurry, and I'd been driving for a while. People sometimes end up on the same route, right? But as I kept going, I noticed the car hadn't pulled back. It wasn't tailgating me, but it was definitely keeping pace. I tried to shake it off. I didn't think there was anything weird about it. Maybe it was just someone else driving home, just like me. I sped up a little, hoping to put a little distance between us, but the car did the same. It was like it was glued to my rearview mirror, no matter how much I tried to get away. At first, I thought maybe it was just coincidence, but then it started to feel wrong. You know how you get that feeling in the pit of your stomach when something's off, even if you can't quite put your finger on it? That's what it was like. This wasn't just a car on the road. It felt like someone was following me, and it made my hands tighten on the steering wheel. I checked my rear view again. The car was still there, the headlights blinding in the reflection. But it wasn't just the fact that it was behind me, it was the way it stayed there, no matter what. No other cars had been on the road when I started driving, and now this one was just there. A few miles in, I took a turn, hoping that maybe I'd lose it, but it stuck with me, never changing position. I started thinking about things like, what would I do if something went wrong? What if this person was waiting for me to make a mistake? It sounds stupid, but my mind started running in circles. I kept trying to rationalize it. Maybe it's just someone on the same route. Maybe they're going to the same place. But the rain kept coming down in sheets, the kind of rain where you can barely see 2 feet ahead of you, and this person just stayed there. I drove on, my heart beating faster now. A few more miles passed, and the car never left my rear view. By this point, I wasn't even thinking about where I was going anymore. I was just focused on getting away from this car. It felt like I was being hunted. I tried to focus on the road. The rain splashed so hard that it sounded like thunder, and my wipers were struggling to keep up. There was this one part of the road, right before you reach the edge of town, where there's a gas station. It's a small, kind of rundown place, usually empty at night, but I figured I could pull in there and wait it out. I don't know why I thought that would be a good idea. Maybe I thought I could lose them, or maybe I thought I could just stop and get out of the car if things got bad. So I made the turn into the station. I'm not sure what I expected to happen, but when I pulled in and stopped under the bright lights of the gas station, the car behind me didn't move. It just sat there in the rain, parked at the edge of the lot, the headlights still burning through the darkness. I sat there for a second, unsure of what to do. My hands were still tight around the wheel. I watched the car in my rear view, waiting for the driver to make a move, but nothing happened. No headlights flicked off, no door opened. It was like they were just sitting there, staring at me. I waited a few more seconds, the silence between us getting thicker and thicker. The only sound was the rain hitting the roof of my car. My heart was pounding in my chest now, and I realized I hadn't taken a breath in what felt like forever. Then, out of nowhere, I heard the click of my door handle. My hand shot over, but it was just the wind moving the handle. I hadn't opened the door. I hadn't even moved. But that noise, my God, the noise, it sent a chill down my spine. I looked out the window again, and there was still nothing. Just the car. I glanced over at the gas station's tiny store. It was closed, dark. I thought about going inside, but that seemed stupid. There was no one around. No one but me in the car, and the last thing I wanted was to be alone with whoever was behind the wheel of that thing. I shifted in my seat, trying to get a better look at the driver. It was hard to see anything through the rain and the blur of the wipers. But I swear I saw movement in the car. It was subtle, but I saw the shadow of a figure. They were just sitting there, not moving. And it felt like they were watching me. Watching, waiting for something. I wasn't about to get out of my car. Not with that person still sitting there, not after everything that had been building up. So I sat there, and I just waited. The minutes stretched on. The rain kept falling, the sound of it becoming a steady white noise in my ears. And still, nothing happened. The car didn't move. The driver didn't get out. After what felt like an eternity, I finally decided I had enough. I wasn't going to sit there forever, wondering if they were going to follow me again. I slowly put the car in drive and started moving, keeping an eye on the rear view. The car stayed where it was. I didn't see the driver's face, didn't see any movement from them. But I didn't stick around to find out either. I got the hell out of there. I didn't look back until I was a few miles down the road, and when I did, the car was still there, parked under the gas station lights, the headlights cutting through the rain like nothing had ever changed. I never saw that car again. I don't know why I didn't call a cab that night. Maybe it was the rain coming down in sheets, like the sky was trying to drown everything below it. Or maybe I was just exhausted from a long shift at work and didn't want to wait for a cab that could take forever to get to me. I told myself the walk home wouldn't be that bad. It was a little after midnight, but my apartment wasn't far, just a few blocks away, even with the downpour. I figured I could handle it. The streets were nearly empty, just me and the sound of my boots splashing in the puddles. I was trying to walk fast, but the rain made it hard to see much of anything. My coat was soaked through, and the weight of it was starting to bug me, but I kept going. I took a shortcut through a side street, the one that's quieter, not much traffic this time of night. It was a familiar route, and I thought it'd be quicker. I wasn't really paying attention to anything, just thinking about getting home, grabbing a shower, and maybe a late-night snack. That's when I noticed him. At first, I wasn't sure. There was someone up ahead, a shadow in the rain, but I figured it was just another person trying to get somewhere. Maybe a fellow late-night worker or someone coming home from a bar. But when I crossed to the other side of the street, I saw him again. The same man. Under a big black umbrella. He was walking toward me, but then he stopped right at the edge of the sidewalk, like he was waiting for something. I didn't think much of it. I kept walking, trying to ignore him. But then, as I passed him, he moved. He didn't walk beside me or anything. He just crossed the street. And I don't mean like he was in a hurry or had somewhere to be. He just casually strolled across, like it was no big deal. The whole time, I felt him watching me, but I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to be paranoid. I kept going, my pace quickening a little. I could hear the sound of his shoes slapping against the wet pavement behind me, but I told myself I was imagining it. The rain was making so much noise, It had to be just my mind playing tricks. Still, I couldn't help it. I looked over my shoulder. And there he was, the same man, right behind me, under his big umbrella. I tried to shake it off. Maybe he was just going the same way, right? People sometimes end up walking the same route. I turned another corner, and I tried not to focus on him. I told myself it wasn't weird. I wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary. But then, when I took another turn, I saw him again. This time, he was already on the other side of the street, waiting by the corner. He hadn't been there when I turned, so I knew he'd crossed the street again. It wasn't like he was following me, but, well, it sure felt like he was. I didn't want to panic. I tried to keep walking, but my steps felt too loud, too fast. I glanced behind me again. The man was still there, walking behind me at a steady pace. Not too fast, not too slow, but just enough to stay right behind me, no matter where I went. I tried to tell myself it wasn't a big deal. Maybe he was just some other person out for a walk in the rain. But then he crossed the street again. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look both ways. He just crossed right in front of a parked car, walking as if he had all the time in the world. It hit me then. I wasn't just being paranoid. He was following me. I looked around. The street was empty, no one else in sight. I thought about stopping to call a cab, but I didn't have my phone out, and I didn't want to risk looking like I was freaking out. I kept walking faster. I could feel my heart racing now, the rhythm of my footsteps too loud against the wet concrete. I kept trying to shake it off, to pretend like it wasn't happening, but the feeling was growing stronger, the pressure of someone behind me. The man wasn't getting any closer, but he wasn't getting any further away either. It was like he was always right behind me, just far enough that I couldn't catch him in my peripheral vision, but close enough that I could feel his presence. The rain kept falling, cold and hard, like it was wrapping everything in a heavy blanket. But the whole time, he was there, his umbrella cutting through the mist like a dark hole against the dim streetlights. At some point, I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't ignore it. I didn't even know why I was still walking instead of running. Maybe I was scared of making a scene. Maybe I was hoping I'd turn a corner, and he'd be gone. But when I finally looked back again, there he was, standing just behind me. I froze. I couldn't move. He was standing so close now, the edge of his umbrella barely out of reach, and I could feel my breath catch in my throat. He didn't speak. He just stood there, watching me. I don't know how long we stood like that. My heart was pounding, and I could feel my hands shaking, but I couldn't look away. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I forced myself to move. I turned quickly, trying to shake him off. I didn't know what else to do. My legs were shaking, and I felt my pulse in my ears as I walked faster, then quicker, then I started jogging. I didn't care how ridiculous I looked. I didn't care about anything but getting away from him. I didn't dare look back. I couldn't. I just kept going. I reached the next intersection and finally saw a light up ahead. A 24-hour convenience store. I didn't hesitate. I bolted straight for the door and slammed it behind me, locking it without even thinking. I stood there for a second, out of breath, staring at the door like I expected it to burst open at any second. But it didn't. I looked through the little window and saw nothing. The rain was still coming down hard, but the man was gone. There was no sign of him anywhere. I stayed inside until the rain let up, too scared to leave. When I finally got home, I double-checked my locks and pulled the blind shut. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't gotten away. I don't know if he was just lost, or if something darker was going on. But I never walked home that late again. It was one of those miserable rainy nights. The kind of rain that doesn't stop, just keeps coming down in sheets, heavy and relentless. I had been working later than usual, so by the time I pulled into the parking lot of the apartment complex, the place was empty. My headlights cut through the wet asphalt, making the whole scene look like some kind of weird, blurry painting. I parked near the back of the lot, under a flickering light that didn't really do much for visibility. I was tired, a little irritable, but I didn't think much about it. Just another late night, right? As I was getting out of the car, I noticed the sound of footsteps. At first, I figured it was just the rain hitting the pavement or maybe someone else walking across the lot, but the sound was too deliberate. It was too fast. I turned around, half expecting to see another tenant, someone heading to their car or coming back from their own late shift. But no one was there. I paused for a second, unsure of whether I should feel weird or if I was just being paranoid. I had that someone's watching me vibe, but it's the kind of thing that comes with being tired and walking through an empty parking lot at night. That's when she appeared. A woman. Running toward me. Her hair was soaked, plastered to her face, and her clothes were sticking to her like she'd been out in the rain for hours. She was breathing hard, her eyes wide, panic written all over her face. It took me a second to process what was happening. She was out of breath, like she'd been sprinting for her life. She didn't even stop when she got close to me, just grabbed my arm. "Please," she gasped, "I'm being chased. Please help me." Her voice was shaky, almost frantic, and there was a wild look in her eyes. I froze. I don't know what I thought I was supposed to do. I don't know what I expected, but her face was enough to make me feel uneasy. It wasn't just fear. There was something else, something that felt wrong. I tried to pull away, not in a harsh way, but just enough to get some space. I mean, I was just a guy on his way into his apartment, and I wasn't about to get dragged into something crazy. "Who's chasing you?" I asked, even though I already didn't want to know the answer. "I don't know," she said, her voice cracking. "I don't know. They were just following me. I was walking from my car, and they..." Her words broke off when she turned her head, like she was listening for something. Her body tensed, like she was preparing to bolt at any moment. Her eyes scanned the lot, jumping from one shadow to another, and I could feel it, too. The way the night suddenly felt too quiet, too still. "Please," she said again, her grip tightening on my arm. Can you just walk with me to my car? I don't feel safe." I felt my pulse pick up, but I still didn't know what the hell was going on. I glanced around the lot, the rain pouring down and splashing in the cracks of the pavement. The place was empty. Too empty. I couldn't hear anyone else, no one walking by, no other cars, nothing. The silence was almost deafening. "Where's your car?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She pointed, but when I looked, I didn't see anything. No car in the spot she pointed to. Just a space with a few puddles reflecting the dull light of the lamps overhead. "Right there," she said, her voice shaky again. But this time, there was a strange look in her eyes, something that didn't quite fit the situation. I started to take a step back, pulling away from her arm. I started to say something, but before I could get the words out, her expression shifted. It was subtle, but it was like someone flipped a switch. Her panic faded instantly, and something else took its place. It was like she'd suddenly found a completely different mask to wear. She wasn't trembling anymore. She wasn't breathless. Her eyes locked on mine, and she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, though. It wasn't even a real smile. It was cold. Empty. Like she was watching me, waiting for me to react. "I've been waiting for you," she said, and the way she said it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I didn't know what to say. My brain froze. There was no way this was happening. None of it made sense. She was just some random woman who'd scared the hell out of me, and now she was acting like we were old friends, like she knew me. But I didn't know her. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice coming out rougher than I meant. I was trying to stay calm, but I was starting to panic a little. "I've been waiting for you," she repeated, still smiling that unnerving smile. "I knew you'd come eventually. I knew you'd be here tonight." My mind raced, trying to connect dots that didn't make sense. Was this some kind of joke? A prank? No, it felt real, too real. I took another step back, looking around the lot again, hoping to see someone else, anything that made me feel like I wasn't completely alone. But there was no one. I could hear the rain hitting the ground, louder now, almost like it was mocking the silence between us. The air felt thick with it, suffocating. My thoughts were scattered, but one thing was clear: I didn't want to be here anymore. I took another step back, and she didn't stop smiling. "You're scared," she said, like she was making an observation, not a question. "It's okay. You don't have to be scared. I just need you to come with me. You'll understand soon." Her voice had gone from anxious to eerily calm, like she was telling me something obvious, something inevitable. The shift in her tone made everything worse. My heart was pounding in my chest now, and I could feel the cold sweat trickling down my back. I had no idea what was going on, but I had to get away from her. I took another step back, my mind yelling at me to get to my apartment, lock the door, and forget this ever happened. I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I just turned and started walking fast, my shoes splashing in the puddles, but I didn't dare look back. Not once. I don't know if she followed me, or if she was still standing there, but I didn't look. I made it to my building, up the stairs, and inside my apartment, locking the door behind me before I even took a breath. I couldn't get the image of her face out of my head. The way her expression changed so suddenly, the way she smiled like she knew something I didn't. And I don't know why she said she'd been waiting for me. But I knew one thing for sure: whatever it was, I never wanted to see her again. So, I stayed in that night. I stayed off the streets for a while. I didn't care how crazy it seemed. That feeling of being watched. I couldn't shake it. And I didn't want to take any chances. It was one of those nights where the rain doesn't really stop, just keeps coming down in sheets, drowning out everything else. I'd been at work all day, and I was exhausted by the time I finally made it home. I parked my car in front of the house, feeling the exhaustion press down on me. I didn't even want to get out, but I knew I had to. The house was quiet when I stepped out of the car and slammed the door behind me, the sound swallowed up by the heavy rain. I took a deep breath as I approached the door, the air smelling thick and damp. As I reached for the handle, something felt off. The door was cracked open. Just a little. Not enough to be alarming, but enough to make me pause. I stood there for a second, rain pouring down, mixing with the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't remember if I had left it open or not, but I was pretty sure I hadn't. I didn't even think much of it at first. Maybe I had just forgotten to lock it. Maybe I hadn't pushed it all the way shut before I left. But the doubt was there, creeping in, making my stomach twist a little. I reached for the door, pushed it the rest of the way open, and stepped inside. The silence hit me immediately. Too quiet. My apartment was always a bit noisy, neighbors playing music, dogs barking, the occasional car driving by, but tonight, There was nothing. Just the sound of the rain pounding outside. I checked the living room first. Everything seemed fine. The couch, the coffee table, my shoes by the door, everything was just as I'd left it. Nothing was missing. No signs of forced entry. I even went into the kitchen, half expecting to see something out of place, but again, there was nothing. The refrigerator was still full. The trash hadn't been messed with. It was as if nothing had happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I turned off the light in the living room and walked down the hallway to my bedroom. The door was shut. I opened it slowly, but nothing seemed amiss. The bed was made. My clothes were still in the hamper. I went through every room, checking every corner. Nothing was out of place. No signs of a break-in, no missing items, no drawers left open. But I couldn't stop the feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was like I was being watched, even though I knew I was alone. I walked back down the hallway, trying to calm myself down. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was just tired and the rain was getting to me. But I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something had happened while I was gone. Then I saw it. The muddy footprints. They were small, almost delicate, leading from the front door all the way to the back of the house. The mud had soaked into the carpet, leaving dark stains in its wake. I don't know why, but the sight of them made my chest tighten. It didn't make any sense. There was no way someone had come in and out of the house without me hearing it. The floors creaked. The walls were thin. The rain wasn't loud enough to drown out footsteps. If someone had been in my house, I would have noticed. But those footprints, they weren't just a small trail. They were clear, precise, like whoever had left them had walked through the entire house. And they led straight to the back door. Not the kitchen. Not the living room. The back door. I froze for a moment, standing there, staring at the tracks. My mind was racing. Could someone have come in? Could I have missed something? Maybe it was someone who lived nearby, who had come in without me noticing. But then I remembered how careful I had been. I checked every window before I left, made sure the locks were all in place. No one should have been able to get in. And yet, here they were. I didn't want to follow them, but my legs seemed to move on their own. The footprints went all the way to the back door, and there was no sign of anyone leaving. No other prints, no marks in the mud. It was like the person had just vanished. I hesitated for a second, my heart pounding. I was suddenly aware of how alone I was. How vulnerable. The rain outside seemed louder now, crashing against the windows like a warning. I moved toward the back door, trying to convince myself that I was being silly. Maybe it was just some animal, maybe someone's pet had gotten in. But then I remembered how clean the floors were. There was no way a pet had made those prints. I reached for the door handle, then stopped. I don't know why, but I couldn't make myself open it. I stood there, staring at the door, imagining what could be on the other side. My mind was racing, thinking of all the possibilities. But none of them made sense. If someone had been in my house, they should have been gone by now. If they were still out there, I had no idea what to do. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. Instead, I took a few steps back, went into the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and called my friend. I wasn't sure why I thought I could explain what was happening, but I needed someone to talk to. Someone to tell me it was okay. But when I looked at my phone, I saw that the call wouldn't go through. No signal. I felt my throat tighten. There was no one I could call, no one who could help me. And I was pretty sure I wasn't imagining this. Those muddy footprints had to mean something. Someone had been in my house. I couldn't just ignore that. I grabbed my keys, went out the front door, and locked it behind me. I knew I wasn't going to be able to sleep tonight. I couldn't stay in the house, not with what had happened, not with those footprints leading to the back. I needed to be somewhere else, anywhere else. I didn't care where I went. As I walked out into the rain, I couldn't stop looking back at the house. I kept telling myself that I'd done the right thing, that I was being smart. But there was one thing I couldn't ignore: the footprints hadn't led anywhere else. And that meant whoever had been in my house, they were still out there. I was just trying to get home. I was already tired from the day, and the rain had been relentless. It was one of those nights where the streets look empty, but you can't help but feel like someone's watching. It was around 11:30 p.m., maybe later, when I got off the bus and started walking down my street. My place was only a few blocks away, so I figured I'd just suck it up and walk through the rain. The street was quiet. Too quiet, actually. The sound of the rain hitting the pavement was almost all I could hear, except for the occasional car driving by far off in the distance. No lights in any of the houses. The street lamps were flickering, casting those weird yellow glows that make everything look blurry. Normally, I would have just focused on getting home, but tonight was different. There was this weird feeling hanging in the air. Like I wasn't alone, even though there was no one else around. As I got closer to my block, I noticed a man standing under one of the streetlights, just kind of staring. At first, I thought he was just waiting for someone or maybe smoking a cigarette. But then I realized he was watching me. Really watching me. I've lived on this street for a few years, and I didn't recognize him. He was tall, probably in his mid-40s, with dark, unkempt hair and a long, weathered coat that looked like it had been soaked in rain for hours. He wasn't moving, just standing there, eyes locked on me as I walked closer. I felt that weird, uncomfortable sensation creeping up my spine, the kind where you know something's wrong but can't quite put your finger on it. I tried not to look at him, but it was hard not to. I swear I could feel his gaze following me with each step. I was probably being paranoid, but I picked up my pace, hoping to make it home faster. I thought, if I just get past him, I'll be fine. But as I got closer, he did something strange. He stepped out from under the street lamp, into the rain, and started walking toward me. At first, it didn't really register. I mean, I've seen people do weird stuff when it's late and they're just wandering around. But as he got closer, I could hear him mumbling to himself. It was low, like he wasn't really talking to me, but his voice was oddly clear in the silence of the night. I know you're gonna see, just wait. His words were garbled, like he was speaking more to himself than anyone else. I slowed down, my instincts kicking in. There was no reason for him to be walking toward me, no reason to be talking like that. My gut was telling me to get away, but I was frozen for a second, caught in that strange tension between wanting to walk faster and not wanting to make it obvious that I was freaked out. I kept walking, though, not wanting to seem paranoid. But with every step I took, he kept closing the distance. His mumbling never stopped, and the rain falling down between us made it sound like everything was echoing. Every footstep I took was louder than the last, and it felt like the world around us had gone completely silent. By the time he was about 10 feet away, I could make out a few of the things he was saying. It was random, but the words were unsettling. Too late now, can't hide anymore. I don't know why I didn't turn around and leave. Maybe it was the rain, or maybe it was just me trying to convince myself I was overreacting. But I kept walking, trying to ignore him. But then he did something even stranger. He stopped. Right in front of me, like we were 2 inches away from bumping into each other. And he looked right at me, his eyes wide, like he was studying me. I didn't know what to do. I had no idea if I should say something, or keep walking, or what. I kept my head down and tried to sidestep him, but he stepped in my way. "I've been waiting for you," he said, his voice clearer now, but still that strange, distant tone. "You don't understand yet, but you will. You'll understand soon." It sounded so strange. I didn't even know how to respond. Was he talking about me? Or was he just out of his mind? My heart started racing, and I felt my stomach drop. I looked around, but there was no one else on the street. Just us. I could hear the rain splattering against the pavement, the soft hum of the streetlights. But the silence between us was thick, almost suffocating. "Hey, what are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. But the guy didn't answer. He just kept staring at me, like he was waiting for something. It was like he didn't even see me, just some figure to focus on. His hands were shaking slightly, his knuckles white from clutching the sleeves of his coat. I didn't know what to do. I thought about turning around, running, but I didn't want to provoke him. I just wanted him to go away. I shifted my weight, thinking maybe I could move past him without it turning into a confrontation. And then, just like that, he stepped back, not moving, but just shifting his position, like he was letting me decide what to do next. I thought maybe he was done, maybe he'd leave me alone. But he didn't. Instead, he started mumbling again, almost louder now. "You can't run from it. It's already here. They'll know." I don't know if I was more freaked out by his words or the way his eyes wouldn't leave me. They felt hollow, like he wasn't really seeing me, just talking to someone who wasn't there. I don't know how long we stood there, but the seconds felt like minutes. I had no idea if he was going to attack me or just keep talking. Finally, after what felt like forever, he moved again. But this time, he walked away. Slowly, like he was reluctant to leave. He didn't look back, just turned around and walked further down the street, away from me. His pace was slow, almost deliberate. I just stood there, watching him, trying to process what had just happened. I didn't wait for him to disappear completely. As soon as he got far enough down the block, I turned around and started walking faster, my heart still hammering in my chest. My thoughts were spinning, trying to make sense of what just went down. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting him to turn around and come back. But he didn't. I finally got to my apartment building, took the stairs 2 at a time, and locked the door behind me. My hands were shaking, my head still spinning. I don't know if he followed me, or if he was just gone, but I wasn't about to take any chances. I wasn't about to risk it. I never saw that guy again, but I'll never forget the look in his eyes. The way he knew something I didn't. Something that wasn't right. It had been a long day at work, and I was more than ready to get home, shut the world out, and relax. The rain had been coming down hard all evening, slashing against the pavement like it wanted to drown everything in its path. I parked my car in the usual spot outside my apartment building, the wet streets reflecting the yellow glow of the streetlights. The building was quiet, as always, with no sign of anyone coming or going. I got out of the car, took a deep breath, and started walking toward the entrance. But then, I noticed something. There was a wet piece of paper stuck to my driver's side window. At first, I thought maybe it was just a flyer or something, but as I got closer, I saw that it was folded in half, a little crumpled, and wet from the rain. I don't know why, but I immediately felt uneasy. I stood there for a second, staring at it, trying to figure out what to do. I had no reason to be paranoid. Nothing had happened that would make me think something was off. But there was something about the way it was stuck to the window, like it was meant for me. I peeled it off carefully, trying not to tear it, and unfolded it in my hands. The note was simple. It just said, "I know where you are." Nothing else. No signature, no explanation. Just those 6 words, scrawled in dark, sloppy handwriting that looked rushed and erratic. I stood there, holding the note, my heart thudding in my chest. It could have been a prank, right? Someone's idea of a joke. But the timing felt wrong. I didn't know anyone who would do something like this, and the way it was left there, so deliberately, made my skin crawl. It didn't feel like a joke at all. I looked around, but the parking lot was empty. There were a few cars, but none of them were familiar to me, and no one was standing around. Just the sound of rain falling, nothing else. I quickly shoved the note in my pocket and hurried inside, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The elevator ride up to my floor felt longer than usual. When I finally made it to my apartment, I locked the door behind me and tried to shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. I made myself dinner, threw on some TV, and tried to distract myself, but it was hard to focus. Every time I glanced out the window or heard a sound in the hallway, I felt like someone was watching me. The next morning, I tried to brush it off. It could have been nothing. People do weird stuff all the time, and I probably just caught someone in a bad moment. But as I stepped outside to leave for work, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The note was still stuck to the window of my car. I stood there for a moment, frozen. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. I thought maybe I had imagined the whole thing, or that I was just being paranoid. But no, there it was again, wet, crumpled, and stuck to my car. The same message, "I know where you are." I don't know how to explain it, but that's when I started feeling the weight of it. The note wasn't just some random thing. Someone had been here. Someone had been watching me, and they knew where I lived. I checked my car, nothing seemed out of place. No signs of forced entry, no strange footprints in the wet ground, nothing. It was as if whoever left the note hadn't even touched the car, aside from sticking the paper to the window. I wanted to call the police, but I didn't have anything concrete. It was just a note, and I couldn't even prove it was meant for me. Maybe it was for someone else, maybe it was just some random person's twisted joke. Still, the unease wouldn't leave me. I felt like someone was standing just out of sight, waiting for me to slip up. That night, I decided I wasn't going to let it get to me. I went to work as usual, kept my head down, tried to focus on my routine. But when I got home, the note was waiting for me again. This time, it was on the windshield. The rain had stopped for a little while, and the paper was dry. But it still had the same message, "I know where you are." I was starting to lose it. Whoever was doing this, they were getting closer. I didn't want to believe it, but the signs were all there. No one had seen anything. No one else seemed to be bothered by it. Just me. I started checking my locks obsessively, checking the windows before I went to bed. I even moved some of the furniture in front of the door, just in case someone decided to try something. It wasn't rational, I knew that. But I couldn't help it. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there, waiting. The next few days were a blur. I'd come home from work, find the note, and tear it up or shove it in a drawer. I didn't know what else to do. I wanted to tell someone, but I didn't even know what I was telling them. Someone's leaving creepy notes on my car? No one would take that seriously. Then one night, I was sitting on the couch, watching TV, when I heard a sound outside. It was faint, almost drowned out by the sound of the rain. But I could hear it, footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps, moving from one end of the parking lot to the other. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. People walk around at night sometimes. But my heart was already pounding, my throat dry. I stood up and peered out the window. There, under the streetlight, was a figure. I couldn't make out details, just the shape of someone standing there, staring at my building. I couldn't tell if they were looking at my apartment or just in my direction. I grabbed my phone, almost too scared to dial, but I didn't want to be alone anymore. I stepped back from the window, sat down again, and waited. My mind was racing with possibilities, none of them good. Who could it be? The person who'd been leaving the notes? Someone else entirely? After what felt like an eternity, the figure started walking away, disappearing into the darkness. I didn't wait to see where they went. I locked every door, double-checked the windows, and turned off all the lights. I stayed awake the rest of the night, just listening for any sound, watching every shadow, too afraid to close my eyes. When I left the next morning, the car was still in the same spot. No note. No sign of anyone. I don't know if I imagined the whole thing, but I couldn't shake the thought that someone had been watching me. I kept checking my rearview mirror on the way to work, expecting to see someone behind me. But there was nothing. No one. I haven't found another note since that night. I don't know who left them or why they stopped, but I can't shake the feeling that it's not over. I still check my car every time I come home, and I still lock everything twice before going to bed. If I ever get another note, I'm not sure what I'll do. But I'm sure of one thing, I won't be ignoring it. Not anymore. It was around 9:30 at night, I think. Hard to tell exactly, my phone was in the cup holder, and I wasn't really checking the time, just focused on getting home. I'd been at my mom's place a couple towns over. She guilted me into staying for dinner and a second glass of wine, so I left later than I planned. The rain started about halfway through the drive. Not just light rain either, it was the kind that makes everything blurry and weird, even with your wipers on full speed. My car's old, a 2008 Civic, and the defrost is iffy. Windows were fogging up, and I couldn't see much beyond the white lines on either side of the road. It was a two-lane highway, mostly trees, no streetlights. I remember passing a little gas station that had already closed, just a single overhead bulb lighting up a row of vending machines, and thinking, if I break down, I'm screwed. No cell service out there. Maybe 10 minutes after that, my check engine light came on. Then the battery light. Then the car just started to slow down like it was losing power. I pressed the gas, but nothing happened. No weird sounds, no smoke, just a steady coast until I pulled off onto the shoulder. The rain sounded louder once I stopped. Kind of smacked the roof like someone drumming their fingers. I sat there a second, engine off, just trying to figure out what to do. I turned on my hazards and checked my phone. No bars. Of course. I even held it up by the windshield like that would help. So I sat for a while. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe longer. I didn't want to open the door because the rain was really coming down, and there wasn't anywhere dry to stand. I kept thinking maybe the signal would pop back in and I could call roadside. Then I saw headlights in my rearview mirror. They came up slow. Not fast like someone speeding by. Just a steady crawl until they stopped about 2 car lengths behind me. For a second I felt relieved. I figured it was someone pulling over to help. Maybe a local or someone with jumper cables. But they didn't get out. They just sat there. I thought maybe they were waiting for me to wave or flash my lights or something, so I tapped my brakes a couple times. Nothing. It was weird. I couldn't see anything past the headlights. The rain made it hard to tell what kind of car it was, just that it was big SUV or truck, probably. I leaned a little toward my side mirror to get a better look, but there was too much glare from their lights. Still, I figured maybe they were calling someone for me, or maybe they were just waiting to see if I needed help. I opened my door a crack, thought about getting out, but the rain hit me hard, cold and fast, like a bucket dumped on my head. So I shut it again. Another minute passed. Then 2. Still no one got out. That's when I started to feel, I don't know, off. I'm not the paranoid type, but something about how still they were, just sitting there with their engine running and lights on me, it felt wrong. So I locked my doors. I know I should have done that earlier. The car just sat there. Engine rumbling low. Lights in my mirrors. I looked down at my phone again. Still no bars. Just the time ticking forward. Then I saw movement. Not from the car behind me, but from the trees off to my right. Just a flicker of motion in the rain. I leaned toward the passenger window, wiped some of the fog off with my sleeve. Didn't see anything. Could have been a branch or an animal. But then it happened again, something darting just at the edge of the woods. Too fast to make out. I stayed still, held my breath. The car behind me still hadn't moved. My hazard lights blinked in rhythm. 1, 2, pause, 1, 2. I don't know how much time passed before I saw the driver's door of the car behind me open. I sat up straighter. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a hoodie with the hood up. He didn't close the door behind him, just left it hanging open. He didn't walk toward me. He just stood there. The rain bounced off his shoulders, dripping from the edges of the hood. Then he stepped forward, slowly. Not directly to my door, kind of at an angle. I panicked. Reached for my keys, turned the ignition. Nothing. Just a click. Again. Click. Nothing. He kept walking, slow and steady, like he knew I wasn't going anywhere. I hit the horn, just a short blare. No reaction. He kept coming. I started yelling. What do you want? No answer. I tried the horn again. Then he stopped. Maybe 10 feet from my driver's side window. He lifted his hand, not waving, not pointing, just holding it up, like he was showing me his palm. I couldn't see his face. The hood was too low, and the rain made everything blurry. I just stared at him, heart going crazy. He didn't move. Then I saw more movement behind him, near the trees. 2 more figures. Both wearing dark clothes, walking slowly toward the road. That was it. I don't even remember deciding. I just climbed over the center console, into the passenger seat, and flung the door open. Rain hit me full in the face, soaked me instantly. I didn't look back. Just ran. There was a break in the trees, maybe 30 feet up the road, a little gravel service road or trail. I don't know. I ran into it. Branches scraped me. My shoes slipped in the mud. I didn't stop until I was deep enough that I couldn't see the main road anymore. I crouched behind a fallen log, trying not to wheeze too loud. The rain covered most sounds, but I could still hear footsteps somewhere behind me. Then nothing. Complete silence, except for the rain. I waited. 10 minutes? Maybe more. I was freezing, soaked through, and scared out of my mind. Eventually, I heard an engine. A loud one. I risked peeking through the trees. The SUV was driving off. No lights. Just the sound of tires crunching wet gravel. Once it was gone, I waited another few minutes, then made my way back toward the road, keeping low and quiet. When I got back to my car, the driver's door was open. No one was around. Inside, my glove box was open. Everything dumped out onto the passenger seat. They hadn't taken anything. Not that I could tell. But they'd gone through it. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring. Eventually I remembered to try my phone again. 1 bar. Enough to get a call through to 911. I told them everything. Gave them mile markers. A state trooper showed up maybe 20 minutes later. He was nice. Didn't say much, just took my statement and called a tow. I didn't tell my mom. Didn't want to freak her out. Mechanic said it was a loose battery connection. Weird, because I had it checked not long before. I don't drive that road anymore. Even if it's faster. I take the long way. Rain doesn't bother me, really. But sometimes, if I see headlights come up behind me too slow, I get this thing in my chest. Like I can't breathe right. Not fear exactly. Just remembering. It was a little after 11, and I was walking back to my apartment from my friend Jamie's place. Normally I'd take an Uber, especially that late, but my phone was dead. Totally dead, didn't even give me the low battery screen, just black. I'd forgotten to bring my charger, and Jamie didn't have the right one. It wasn't a long walk. Maybe 15, 20 minutes if I cut through the park. I didn't like doing that late at night, but it had started raining while I was at Jamie's, and the sidewalk along the main road gets flooded when it pours. The park path stays dry enough because of the trees overhead. I had my hood up, hands shoved in my pockets, head down. It was that kind of rain that's quiet but steady. Not loud, just a constant light pattering sound. I could feel it soaking through the tops of my shoes. There weren't many people out. A couple cars passed me on the street before I turned into the park, but once I was inside, it was just the sound of rain and my footsteps. The first time I noticed the guy, I was about halfway down the main path. It's a straight line between 2 rows of tall trees, with a few benches and those old-fashioned street lamps that give off more shadow than light. I didn't see him right away. I just heard something behind me, a scuff, like a shoe on wet pavement. I glanced over my shoulder. He was maybe 50 feet back, wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up. I couldn't see his face. I didn't think anything of it at first. It's a public path, people walk through it. But something felt off. It was how quiet he was. No phone, no headphones, no umbrella. Just walking. And when I sped up a little, not running, just a quicker pace, I realized he was keeping pace with me. Same distance behind, same rhythm of steps. I slowed down again. He slowed down too. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't like I was imagining it. He was matching me. I took out one of my earbuds, even though they weren't connected to anything. Just wanted to hear better. All I could hear was the rain and his footsteps behind mine. I tried to tell myself he was just headed in the same direction. Nothing weird. But then I stopped. Pretended to check something in my pocket, just to see what he'd do. He stopped too. No hesitation. Just stopped walking. I didn't turn around. Just stood there, pretending to dig for my keys or something. I could feel him behind me, still 50 feet back. Not moving. I stayed like that for maybe 10 seconds, then started walking again, this time off the path toward a side trail. It curves around the playground and connects to another exit near a grocery store. It's darker there, no lights, but I figured if he wasn't following me, I'd know. After about 30 steps, I glanced back. He was still behind me, now only about 30 feet back. He'd closed the gap. That's when I started to get scared. Like actual fear, not just nerves. I didn't want to run and make it obvious. So I just kept walking, faster. Focused on breathing normal, pretending I wasn't bothered. I passed the playground, the swings were swaying in the rain, empty, and headed toward the far end of the park. There's a break in the trees where the fence is bent down, and people sometimes cut through there to the grocery store lot. I looked back again. He was closer. 20 feet. Still walking. Not running. Just following. I veered off the trail toward the fence. My shoes slipped in the wet grass. I grabbed the fence and climbed over it, scraping my hand on the top. Dropped down on the other side, landed hard. I ran through the back of the parking lot, past the delivery trucks. All the lights were off, the store closes early. I ducked behind one of the dumpsters and crouched, trying to be quiet. My breath was loud. I tried covering my mouth with my sleeve. I waited. I didn't hear anything for a while. Then I heard footsteps. Slow. Careful. He'd climbed the fence too. I peeked around the side of the dumpster. He was walking through the lot, not looking around, just moving forward like he knew where I'd gone. I stayed completely still. My legs were shaking. My hands were freezing. He passed by me, maybe 10 feet away. He wasn't even looking side to side, just walking. I let him get a little farther, then turned and bolted toward the opposite end of the lot. There's a row of houses with tall fences, and I knew if I could make it to the corner, there's a 24-hour laundromat on the next block. I didn't look back. I just ran. Cut through a gap between two garages, out onto the street. When I hit the sidewalk, I finally looked. No one. I sprinted across the road and straight into the laundromat. It was empty, except for a guy folding clothes near the dryers. He looked up at me, probably saw I was soaked and out of breath, and just kind of gave me a weird look. I sat down in the corner near the vending machine and stayed there for almost an hour. Didn't see the guy again. Eventually, I borrowed a charger from the guy folding clothes. He had one of those universal cables. I got enough juice to order a rideshare home. I didn't tell the driver anything. Just sat quiet and watched the streetlights blur past the window. When I got back to my building, I checked behind me the whole way up the stairs. I don't walk through the park anymore. Even during the day. Just can't. I just left my cousin's place, stayed too long playing board games and messing around with her old keyboard, and by the time I stepped outside, it was pouring. The kind of rain where everything feels smaller, like your whole world's just your headlights and the road in front of you. I live about 20 minutes from her place if traffic's good, but there's this stretch of back road I usually take that cuts through a semi-rural area. Few houses, a couple fields, mostly trees. No streetlights, no sidewalk. I always drive it a little slower at night. About halfway through, I saw hazard lights blinking ahead. It was an old beige sedan pulled off to the side. The hood was up, and the driver's door was open. I slowed a little, partly out of habit, partly just curious. As I got closer, I saw a guy standing next to the open hood, wearing a hoodie, the light kind, gray with dark sleeves. He had one hand tucked into the pocket of his jeans, and the other holding the hood up like it needed help staying open. I would have kept going, honestly, but as I passed, he stepped into the road and waved. Not frantically, just a quick one-handed wave. I pulled over maybe 20 feet ahead of his car. Put my hazards on. He jogged up to my passenger side, so I cracked the window. Rain blew in as soon as I did. He leaned down, looked maybe mid-30s, pale, beard stubble, tired looking. He said, "Sorry, my phone's dead. Can I use yours real quick? I just need to call my brother. He's 5 minutes away." I hesitated, but I handed him my phone. I figured, okay, 5 minutes away, he makes a call, gets picked up, no big deal. He took it without saying thanks. That should have bothered me, but I didn't think much about it at the time. He turned and walked a few feet back toward his car, still holding my phone. I watched him, kind of annoyed he didn't just make the call right there. He stood next to his car for a second, screen lighting up his face, then he looked over his shoulder and said, "Yeah, it's not going through. Spotty out here. I'm just texting him." I said, "All right," and waited. Another minute passed. He was still typing, not looking at me. Then he said, without turning around, "I think my friends are closer actually. They'll handle it." That's what he said. "They'll handle it." Then he just put my phone in his hoodie pocket. I sat up straight. "Hey, can I get that back?" He didn't answer. I asked again, louder, "Can you give me my phone?" He looked over at me, totally blank expression, like I'd asked him something boring. Then he said, "It's fine. Don't worry. They'll come." He turned his back to me again. That's when I got a gut punch feeling. Not panic yet, but that deep cold you get when something's really off and you know it. I opened my door a few inches and leaned out. "Hey, man, seriously. I need my phone." He didn't move. I got out, walked halfway toward him, keeping my distance. Rain hit hard against my jacket, soaking my pants. He turned slowly and looked right at me. Didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just looked. I said, "It's fine," he said. His tone wasn't angry. It was calm. That's what made it worse. I stopped walking. We stared at each other maybe 3 seconds. Then he said, "You should go. You don't want to be here when they show up." My heart started racing. "I'm not leaving without my phone," I said. He didn't respond. I started backing up. I wasn't going to get into a fight over a phone, but something about how still he was, how sure he seemed, freaked me out more than if he'd yelled at me. I got back in my car, locked the doors. He turned away again, like he was done with me. I sat there, thinking. No signal, no phone, just rain and the dashboard lights. Then I saw headlights in the distance behind me. A car coming. I felt this weird sense of hope for a second, thinking maybe it was a cop or just someone who'd stop and help. But as it got closer, I started to feel worse. The car was slowing down, pulling to the side, parking behind both of us. No flashing lights. Just idling. The man with my phone turned, walked toward the new car, and got in the back seat. No words, no rush. I couldn't see inside the car. Windows were fogged and tinted. They didn't leave. Just sat there. No one got out. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't call anyone. I couldn't drive off without risking getting boxed in. So I sat. For maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Then the passenger door of the second car opened, just slightly, and a man stepped out. He looked around, saw me still sitting there. Then he shut the door and leaned on the car like he was waiting. No umbrella. Just standing in the rain. Then another guy got out of the back seat, came around and popped their trunk. I swear I saw something metal inside, couldn't tell what. Maybe a jack. Maybe tools. That's when I threw my car in reverse, hard. I backed up into the grass, cutting wide around their car, and floored it back the way I came. My tires spun a little in the mud, but I made it onto the road. I looked in the mirror. They hadn't followed me. Not right away. About a mile later, I saw headlights again. Same shape. No high beams. I sped up. I took every turn I could, even the long way through residential streets. I didn't go home. I went to a gas station with bright lights and people around. Pulled up, got out, told the cashier to call the cops. They let me use their phone. I reported it all. Gave my info. Filed a report. Never got my phone back. Cops said they didn't find anyone out there when they checked. Said the plate I described didn't match anything in the system. They asked if maybe I misremembered. I didn't. I remember every second of that night like I'm still sitting in my car, watching him slip my phone into his pocket like it didn't matter. Like I wasn't a person to him. Just someone passing through. Someone in the wrong place. It was raining hard that night. The kind of rain that makes you feel like your clothes are wet even under your jacket. I was coming home from work late around 9:30. I remember because I was annoyed I had stayed after closing to help the new guy with inventory, and by the time I left, everything was already soaked. My jeans stuck to my legs, and my jacket was starting to leak at the shoulders. I live in a duplex in a quiet part of town. Not quite rural, not quite suburban. Just kind of in between. It's usually quiet at night, especially during the week. Streetlights are spaced too far apart, so the houses get these big patches of darkness between them, and the trees around the lot creak when it's windy. That night, they were really going. Anyway, I pulled into my driveway and noticed right away something looked off. My porch light was on, which I always leave on, but the front door was not quite shut. Just barely ajar. Not wide open or anything, just enough to see that little black sliver of inside. At first I thought maybe I hadn't latched it properly. I'd left in a hurry that morning, trying not to be late. Maybe I'd just pulled it shut without locking it. That was my first thought, and I was already halfway up the steps before I paused. I've had that door stick before. When it's not latched, the wind usually pushes it open wider. That's how I noticed it once a few months ago. Came home and it was fully open because it hadn't caught right. But this time it was just cracked. Not pushed open by the wind, even though the trees were moving like crazy. I stood there a few seconds, just looking at it. I don't know why I didn't go straight in. Something just felt wrong. I stepped up real slow, rain dripping off my hood. The porch creaked under my feet. I reached out and pushed the door open gently with 2 fingers. All the lights were off. Just a faint orange glow from the streetlight behind me came in through the window. And then I saw the coat rack. It's one of those freestanding ones, a cheap black metal one I got from Target. I don't keep much on it. Usually just my keys, a hoodie, maybe a cap. But hanging right in the middle of it was a long, dark jacket. Not mine. Not anything I recognized. Heavy looking. The kind of thing someone might wear to stay dry in this kind of weather. The worst part was, it was soaked. Water dripped steadily from the sleeves and the bottom hem onto the floor. There was already a little puddle beneath it. That's when my stomach flipped. I didn't go inside. I backed off the porch and walked down to the sidewalk, trying to look at the house from a little distance, like maybe I'd realize it was nothing. Like maybe it was something I forgot. Maybe a neighbor had come by, or a friend left something that made sense. But there was no reason anyone would have gone in. I hadn't given anyone a key, and the back door was always locked. The only spare I had was in the lockbox under the porch, and I checked later, it was still there. I thought about calling the police, but I didn't even know what I'd say. There's a wet coat in my house? It sounded stupid. I stood there for probably 5 or 6 minutes, just watching the open door. I don't think I blinked. Then I realized something. The puddle under the jacket was still growing. Like the jacket hadn't been hanging there long. It was still dripping fresh water. Whoever had come in had done it recently. That's when I reached for my phone. I had one hand still in my jacket pocket, and I pulled it out, screen lit, 9:42. I dialed 911 but didn't hit call yet. I told myself I'd go check the back window first, just to see if maybe it had blown open and someone, God knows why, had stepped inside. I walked around the house, stepping over wet branches and through patches of tall grass. The rain was cold on my neck. Every window on the side and back was shut tight. Curtains still drawn. No sign of anything. I started to get that full body cold that wasn't from the rain. I just had this image in my head of someone standing behind the coat rack, in the dark, waiting. I didn't go back up the porch. I backed away again and walked down the street a little, closer to where my neighbor Jim lives. He's an older guy, quiet, but we've talked a few times over the fence. His light was on. I knocked. He answered after a minute, wearing an old t-shirt and slippers. I must have looked crazy, soaked through, staring past him like I expected someone to come up behind me. I told him I thought someone might be in my house. I said I came home and the door was open and there was a wet jacket on my coat rack that didn't belong to me. He looked at me for a second, then stepped outside and said, "Let's take a look." I told him I already checked the windows, that I hadn't gone inside. He nodded and said, "Wait here." He went back inside and came out with a small flashlight and a baseball bat. We walked back to my house together. Porch light still on. Door still cracked. Jacket still hanging there. He went in first, slowly, calling out, "Hello?" He flipped the lights on as he went. I followed close behind, but stayed near the door. The living room was empty. So was the kitchen. The coat rack was just inside to the right, and the jacket looked even worse up close. Like, older than I first thought. The material was stiff and heavy, not the kind of thing most people wore these days. The puddle under it was big. Jim walked through each room with the bat raised, opening closet doors, checking behind furniture. I followed him upstairs. No one in the bathroom, no one in my bedroom. Then we opened the guest room door. Everything was how I left it, except for the window. It was unlocked. Not open, but the latch was turned sideways. I never leave it unlocked. We both looked at it, and Jim said, "Someone came in through here." The rain would have made it loud, but I hadn't been home to hear it. We checked the rest of the house again. Still no one. No signs of anything else touched. Nothing stolen. Nothing moved. Just that coat. Jim said I should call the cops and file a report, so I did. They came about 20 minutes later, took a look around, asked some questions. They bagged the coat as evidence, said maybe it'd have prints, though the rain might have washed them off. They said I was lucky nothing happened. That maybe someone thought the place was empty, tried to dry off, and ran when they heard me pull in. I changed the locks the next day. Bought a camera for the front porch and one for the back window. I still live there, but I check every door and window before I leave and as soon as I come back. And I don't work late anymore if I can help it. I never found out whose jacket that was. It was around 10:30 at night, and the rain had been going steady for a couple of hours. I was driving home from my sister's place. She lives about 40 minutes out of town, and I always regret staying that late when the weather's bad. My wipers were going full speed, and I still couldn't see much beyond 10 feet in front of the car. The highway was nearly empty. About 15 minutes from home, I had to take the back roads. No streetlights, just long stretches of trees and runoff ditches. The kind of road where you slow down when you see headlights coming, not out of courtesy but because it's the only thing keeping you oriented. I was rounding a bend when I saw someone standing on the shoulder, barely lit by my headlights. They were soaked like they'd been out in the storm for a while. At first I thought it was some kind of prank. But when I got closer, I saw it was a guy, maybe in his late 20s or 30s, wearing what looked like a gray hoodie and dark jeans. He had his thumb out. I passed him. That was my first instinct, keep driving. But about 30 seconds later, I slowed down. I thought, what if that was me out there? No phone, no signal, middle of nowhere. So I turned around. When I pulled up next to him, I rolled the window down a few inches and asked where he was headed. He didn't answer right away, just looked at me through the window like he wasn't sure if he'd imagined me stopping. "Can I get in?" he asked, kind of shouting over the rain. I hesitated, then hit the unlock button. "Yeah, but just to town," I said. "I'm not going farther than that." He climbed in fast, slammed the door, and didn't say a word. Water pooled on the seat under him. He just stared straight ahead. "Where to?" I asked after a few seconds. He didn't answer. Just reached over and hit the lock button. All the doors clicked shut. That made me go cold. I laughed, kind of nervously. "You okay, man?" Still nothing. I glanced at him, and he wasn't looking at me, not even a little. He was staring at the dashboard. Like blank, not blinking, like his brain wasn't even in the car. I said, "I can take you to town." I tried again. "Where in town?" He didn't turn his head, but I saw his jaw move like he was chewing on the inside of his cheek. Then he said, "Just drive." I could hear how calm he was. Too calm. It wasn't a panic "just drive" or a grateful "thanks for the ride." It was flat. Almost bored. I didn't move. My hands were still on the steering wheel, but I didn't shift into drive. "I need to know where you're going," I said, trying to keep my voice even. He turned his head a little, not looking at me exactly, but out my side of the windshield. I said, "Just drive," he said again. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make a threat. But I felt trapped. It was like the way he said it had a weight behind it. And the car doors being locked, I couldn't stop thinking about that. So I put it in drive. The rain picked up again, and the wipers started slapping back and forth. I kept glancing at him, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. He still hadn't told me where he wanted to go. He didn't ask me for anything. He didn't even seem interested in me at all. After a few miles, I reached over and flicked on the heater vents. He was dripping on everything. I asked again, "Do you live around here?" Nothing. Then I noticed he didn't have anything with him. No backpack, no bag, no phone in his hands. just soaked clothes and sneakers caked in mud. Were you walking long? I tried. You must have been freezing out there. Still nothing. I started getting pissed. I didn't say anything out loud, but I was running through options in my head. Should I turn around, pull over at a gas station, drive straight to the police station? That last one stuck. So I kept driving, but I changed my route. There's a 24-hour station just outside town. I figured I'd act like I was going to stop for gas, or maybe say I had to use the restroom. Just something to get out of the car. We passed a mile marker and a small convenience store that was dark. I slowed a little, trying not to look obvious. Then, out of nowhere, he spoke again. You passed the turn. I felt a jolt, like he'd read my mind. What turn? I asked. The one that goes up toward the quarry. There's nothing out there, I said. That road's a dead end. He turned his head fully then and looked at me for the first time. His eyes weren't angry. They were tired. Like he hadn't slept in days. Just turn around, he said. That was it. I didn't argue. I pulled off to the side, like I was going to make a U-turn. I even reached for the shifter. But instead, I threw the car in park and yanked the keys out of the ignition. Then I popped the locks and opened the door all in one motion. The second I stepped out, I ran. I didn't think. I just sprinted into the trees on the side of the road, slipping on wet leaves and stumbling over roots. I heard the car door open behind me. Then I heard his footsteps. He didn't shout. He didn't chase me fast. Just that steady sound, crunch, crunch, splash, moving into the woods behind me. I crouched behind a down log, breathing through my mouth so I wouldn't make noise. The rain helped. It was so loud I could barely hear myself think. After a few minutes, the footsteps stopped. I stayed frozen for I don't know how long. My jeans were soaked, and I was shivering. I kept picturing him standing just behind a tree, waiting for me to move. Eventually, I didn't hear anything. Just the rain. So I crawled, then walked, then ran again until I found another road. It took me 20 minutes of walking before I saw headlights. The woman who picked me up was cautious at first, understandably. But when she saw how wet and shaken I was, she let me in. I told her everything. She drove me straight to the police station. They found my car the next morning, abandoned on the side of the road. The passenger door was wide open. There was no sign of the guy. No fingerprints. No tire tracks. Nothing. I didn't pick up another hitchhiker after that. And I never drive that road at night anymore. It was one of those late, cold October nights when the rain doesn't pour, it just needles down, thin and constant. I'd missed the earlier bus and ended up stuck at this barely lit stop on the edge of a quiet strip of road about 10 minutes outside the city. Not the best place to be alone, but the next one wasn't supposed to come for another 20 minutes, and calling a rideshare felt like overkill for a cheap trip across town. The street was mostly dark. One overhead light buzzed now and then, flickering like it couldn't make up its mind. There was a bench under a narrow overhang, just barely shielding from the rain. I was already damp from the walk there and just sat down, pulled my hood up, and waited. It was quiet except for the rain and the occasional hiss of cars speeding by. I kept checking my phone, refreshing the bus tracker even though I knew it never updated in real time. I was tired. Just wanted to get home. About 10 minutes in, I heard footsteps. At first I thought it was someone passing by, maybe cutting through from the other side of the street. but they got closer and then stopped. I looked up. A man was standing just outside the shelter, facing the road. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, arms at his sides, letting the rain hit him straight on. No umbrella, no hood. He was wearing this kind of faded windbreaker, like a thrift store find. Khakis, dirty sneakers. Something about him looked off. Not wild or threatening. Just like he didn't fit. I glanced away, tried not to be obvious about looking. Then he stepped under the shelter and sat down on the bench. Not far from me either, just a little too close. There was space to spread out, but he chose right next to me. I could hear water dripping from his clothes onto the concrete. For a while he said nothing. I shifted a little to the side, subtly, trying to make it clear I didn't want to talk. He was breathing a little heavy. Not like he'd been running, but like his nose was stuffed up or something. Just kind of labored. Then he leaned toward me and said, real quiet, I saw you earlier. I know what you did. My brain froze. I didn't turn toward him. I just stared straight ahead, trying to process what I just heard. I thought maybe I misheard him. Or he was talking to someone on the phone. But he wasn't holding anything. And after a pause, he said it again, same tone, low and calm. I saw you earlier. And I know what you did. I turned to him then, not fully, just a glance. He was staring straight ahead too. Not at me. Not even smiling or anything. Just dead calm. I said, what? He didn't answer. He blinked slowly, then kind of adjusted his position, like he was settling in. He had that wet dog smell, like his clothes hadn't dried properly in days. I think you've got me mixed up with someone else, I said. Still nothing. I looked around, no one else nearby. The street was empty, just the distant sound of tires on wet pavement. I stood up slowly, still trying not to show I was freaked out, and walked a few steps toward the edge of the shelter. Pulled my phone out, pretended to check something, mostly just trying to get a bit of distance. He didn't move. Just kept sitting there, looking at the street. I turned my screen brightness down and opened the camera app so I could see him behind me. Not super well, just a dark blur sitting hunched over on the bench. Then I heard him say, I remember your face. Clear as day. No slur, no stutter. Like he wasn't trying to scare me, like he was just stating a fact. I made up my mind then to leave. Screw the bus. I didn't want to walk back the way I came, it would have meant passing close by him, but I remembered seeing a gas station a couple blocks down. Probably open. Probably people inside. I could call someone from there. I took a few steps back into the rain. Didn't run, didn't look behind me. Just walked fast, shoulders up, hoodie pulled tight. I got half a block away before I risked turning to look. He wasn't sitting on the bench anymore. I looked all around. Nothing. The sidewalk was clear. The street behind me was clear. Then I saw him again, standing under a tree maybe 15 feet off the road, near a fence line. Not moving. Just watching. My stomach dropped. I turned back fast and kept walking, quicker this time. The gas station wasn't far, but in the rain, it felt like it took forever. Every time I passed a driveway or alley, I checked it out of the corner of my eye. I didn't see him again. Not right away. I got to the station, opened the door, and tried to play it cool as I walked in. The cashier looked up and gave me a nod. I went to the back where the drinks were and stood there pretending to browse while I peeked through the windows. It was fogged up near the edges, but I didn't see anyone. I stayed there for a few minutes. Then I bought a soda I didn't want and asked the cashier if I could just wait inside a little. Told him some guy had been creeping around at the bus stop and I didn't feel great walking home. He shrugged and said, "Sure, yeah. Happens sometimes around here." I hung out by the window, watching the lot. Maybe 10 minutes later, a car pulled up. Old Corolla, navy blue, missing hubcaps. Guy in the driver's seat. And the guy from the bench in the passenger seat. He didn't get out. Just sat there, staring at the store. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look particularly interested. But I swear he was looking straight at me. I told the cashier. He came to look, said he didn't recognize the guy, but agreed it was weird. The car stayed there another minute, then slowly pulled out and turned onto the road. No headlights. Just slipped away into the dark. I got a friend to come pick me up. I didn't tell her everything, just that some guy had been bothering me and I didn't want to walk home alone. We left together. I checked over my shoulder the whole ride. I never saw the guy again. Never figured out what he meant. Maybe he was just messed up. Maybe he really thought he knew me. But it wasn't just the words he said that night. It was how sure of them he was. Like whatever he thought I did, he truly believed it. I just sort of woke up. Maybe it was the rain. It had been coming down hard all night, steady and loud, making that constant drumming sound on the roof and windows. I sat up a bit, wiped my face. The house was quiet. Then I heard a knock. Not from the front door. Not even the back door. It was from the window next to my bed. It wasn't loud, just one quick, deliberate tap. That glass on knuckle kind of sound. I froze. My bedroom is on the second floor. There's no porch roof underneath, no tree nearby that someone could climb. Just a plain wall of siding all the way up. I waited. Thought maybe I imagined it. Could have been something from the wind or the rain, right? Then I heard it again. Tap. Exactly the same. Same spot. Same tempo. That's what really messed with me. It sounded intentional. Like someone was knocking to get my attention. I stayed there for a second, completely still, heart pounding, and finally got up. I walked to the window but didn't look out right away. I moved the curtain just slightly with my finger and peeked through the gap. Nobody. The street was empty. The porch light lit up the yard just enough to see that no one was standing below. I exhaled a little too hard and almost laughed at myself. I was just about to let the curtain fall back into place when I noticed something else. My car's windshield wipers were going. It was parked at the curb right in front of the house. I could see the blades moving back and forth rhythmically. The car was off. I hadn't driven it since the afternoon. There was no reason the wipers should be on. I leaned in a little closer, squinting through the rain. No lights on in the car. Just the wipers, swiping over and over across the wet glass. It was subtle, but I felt that twist in my stomach. Something was wrong. I went downstairs slowly. Every creak in the steps felt 10 times louder than usual. I unlocked the front door and stepped onto the porch. The rain was still going, not quite pouring but enough to soak me in a few minutes. I stood there a second, listening, then stepped out and started toward the car. I didn't go straight to it. I walked along the edge of the yard, toward the driver's side, watching to see if there was someone inside. I didn't see movement. I didn't see anything. When I got to the door, I tried the handle. Locked. I stepped back and looked around again, scanning the sidewalk, the neighboring houses, the bushes across the street. Nothing. Then I saw the footprints. They were in the grass, coming from the sidewalk. Wet shoe prints, pressed deep, not yet washed away by the rain. They went up to the side of the house, around the side yard. I followed them with my eyes, just to the edge of the porch, to the wall directly under the window by my bed. I turned back to the street. Still empty. I hurried inside, locking the door behind me. This time I made sure to throw the deadbolt. I went into the kitchen, grabbed my phone from the counter. I hadn't taken it upstairs when I went to bed. I didn't call the cops. Not yet. I stood there for a while, just gripping it, listening. Nothing else happened for the next half hour. Eventually, I went back to bed, though I didn't sleep. I just lay there watching the window, waiting for another knock. The next morning, the wipers were off. 3 days went by. I didn't tell anyone. I don't know why, maybe it felt too weird, like I wouldn't know how to explain it without sounding paranoid. I kept checking the car obsessively, though. Locking the doors 3 times. Keeping the porch light on all night. Then, Friday night, it started raining again. I was in the living room, just watching something on TV with the volume low. I kept glancing at the front window, feeling tense, like I was waiting for something to happen. I didn't know what. A little after midnight, I went to lock up. I stood by the door for a second, thinking about whether I should check outside again, just to be sure. I looked through the peephole. There was someone standing in the street. Not close. Just barely in the glow of the streetlight. A man, maybe late 30s or 40s. Couldn't make out much because of the raincoat and the hood, but he was facing the house. Facing me. I stayed there, not breathing, watching him. He didn't move. After maybe a minute, he turned slowly and walked down the sidewalk. No rush. Just walked off into the dark. That night, I slept on the couch with a baseball bat and the lights on. The last thing happened 2 days later. It was still raining. I hadn't left the house all day. I was working from home, keeping the blinds down, only getting up for food or the bathroom. I was honestly starting to feel kind of ridiculous, like maybe I'd built it up too much in my head. Then, sometime after 1 a.m., I got thirsty. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and as I was turning off the faucet, I heard a faint scraping sound. It was coming from the back door. I froze. It wasn't knocking this time. Just a light, slow drag like something metal over the door frame. I crept over and looked through the tiny frosted window in the center. I couldn't see anything clearly. I backed away and went around to the hallway, flipped the back porch light on. No one was there. But as I looked out, something clicked in my head. The gate to my backyard, the one I always keep latched, was swinging open. That was it for me. I called the cops. They came, checked the property. Nothing. No one around. They said there'd been reports of people trying car doors and looking through windows in the area the past week. Told me to keep everything locked and call if it happened again. It didn't. But the footprints? They were back. Clear as day in the mud, leading up to my back door. This time, they didn't go back toward the gate. They stopped right there on the mat. Like whoever it was stood there for a while. Just waiting. I'd stayed late at work finishing up a report I should have wrapped earlier, and by the time I left, The parking lot was almost empty. Just a few cars here and there. It had been raining on and off since late afternoon, but by then it was coming down pretty steady. Not heavy, but the kind of constant drizzle that soaks into your clothes in minutes. I had a hoodie but no umbrella, so I kept my head down and jogged to my car. I parked toward the back of the lot that day, not far from a side alley that leads out to the main road. I didn't think anything of it. It's a safe area. I've done that a dozen times. I unlocked the car with my key fob as I walked up. The lights blinked. Everything normal. As soon as I opened the door and put one foot in, I heard fast footsteps behind me, white shoes slapping the pavement hard, coming in a dead sprint. I barely had time to register it when someone slammed into the passenger side and yanked the handle. It startled me so bad I dropped my bag into the footwell. The person, a man, was screaming something through the glass. I couldn't hear him clearly through the rain in the window, but he was yelling loud. He was soaked from head to toe, no coat, just a dark long-sleeve shirt plastered to him. His eyes were wide, bloodshot. He looked completely out of it. Panicked. He started banging on the window with the side of his fist, not even looking at me, like he was trying to get in by sheer force. I scrambled to shut the driver's door and lock the car. He tried the handle again, pulled at it like crazy, then started shouting louder. I finally heard what he was saying. Let me in, they're coming, please, they're coming. He kept glancing behind him, over his shoulder, toward the alley. But there was nobody there. I didn't say anything. I didn't roll the window down. I just sat there, frozen, one hand still on the door handle, the other fumbling for the start button. He kept yelling, please, I'm begging you, just let me in for a second, they're hunting me, please, I swear. At that point I got the car started. I backed up fast, almost hitting the curb. He jumped back, hands still raised, still shouting. But now something was off. I realized he wasn't running anymore. He wasn't trying to open the back door or get away. He just stood there, drenched, staring at me as I turned onto the main road. He didn't move. I drove about 2 blocks before pulling into a gas station. There was a 24-hour place with decent lighting, and I sat there for a few minutes in the car, trying to breathe normally. My hands were shaking. I kept replaying it, how he ran up out of nowhere, the way he kept looking behind him, and that phrase, they're hunting me. That wasn't just weird. It sounded rehearsed. Like something from a movie. Or like he was trying to get me to panic. I considered calling the cops, but what would I say? Some guy scared me in a parking lot? Still, I didn't want to go home yet. I didn't like the idea of him following me, even if that didn't make sense. So I waited there. Got out eventually, went into the store, bought a bottle of coffee I didn't even want. Just to look normal. The guy never showed. I didn't see anyone outside. I figured he must have run off or found someone else to help him. I told myself that maybe it was real. Maybe he was in trouble. But here's the part one can't shake. When I got back in the car, I noticed something weird with the door. The passenger side. The lock was up. I had definitely locked all the doors when I got in earlier. I remember pressing the button and hearing them click. I was sure of it. And I hadn't unlocked anything since. So why was that one up? I double-checked the button, tested it. Everything worked. It wasn't a glitch. It felt deliberate. Like someone had tried the handle just as I hit the lock button and managed to catch it mid-cycle, just enough to disengage that one side. That freaked me out. I drove home fast after that. Made sure nobody was following. Took 2 different turns off my usual route just in case. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a second before getting out. It was still raining. When I got to my door, I looked back once more down the street. No cars. No people. Quiet. The next day, I got to work earlier than usual. I parked closer to the front, under one of the lights. I didn't mention anything to anyone. I just tried to focus. Around lunch, I walked out to my car to grab something from the glove box. And there, on the passenger side, just under the handle, was a smear. It looked like a palm print. It wasn't dirt, exactly, more like grease or something dark and oily. Just a partial handprint, like someone had leaned hard against the door with wet hands. I stood there staring at it for a long time. I hadn't seen it the night before. But then again, it was dark and raining. I hadn't looked closely. Maybe it had been there since. Or maybe it hadn't. I wiped it off with some napkins and didn't tell anyone. That weekend, I went to visit my brother for a few days. Just to get out of town. He lives in a small place about 45 minutes away. I didn't tell him what happened again. It felt weird to explain. He let me park in his driveway. First night, no issues. Second night, though, I woke up at 3 a.m. and looked out the window facing the driveway. There was someone standing by my car. Just standing there. Not moving. No umbrella. Just like before, so close, clinging to them, facing the driver's side. They weren't doing anything, not trying to open the door or look inside. Just there. I didn't even move. I just stood there behind the curtain, watching. After maybe 2 minutes, they turned and walked away. Not down the street. Toward the woods behind my brother's property. I left first thing the next morning. Back at my place, nothing happened for a while. I started parking inside the garage, kept lights on outside, added a camera facing the driveway. Then one night about a month later, I forgot to close the garage before bed. It wasn't open all the way, just cracked a couple feet. I didn't realize it until around 1 a.m. when I went down to get a glass of water and saw the gap. I went to close it from inside, but something told me to check the footage first. I pulled up the camera on my phone and rewound to about an hour earlier. At 12:08 a.m., a figure walked into frame from the street. Walked straight up to the garage. Stood there, crouched slightly, looking in under the gap. They stayed like that for 10 full minutes. Then they turned around and walked off. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I haven't seen the guy again since that night, but I moved a couple months later. Different city. New job. No one knows my address except close friends. I still think about that first night, though. The way he ran up screaming, "They're hunting me." I wonder if he was trying to play the victim. Or maybe trying to lure me out of the car. But what gets me is, what if I had let him in? What if I'd unlocked the door? What was going to happen next? It was raining pretty hard that night. Not stormy, just that steady, relentless rain that messes with your depth perception. The kind that makes everything outside look blurry through the windows. I had the living room light on, but the rest of the house was dark. I was on the couch in sweatpants, halfway through some crime docuseries I wasn't even paying that much attention to. It was close to midnight when someone knocked on my door. Not the kind of knock where you know someone's trying to be polite. This was loud and rushed, 3 quick hits, a pause, then more. I actually flinched. It didn't sound like someone asking for help. It sounded urgent. I live in a small neighborhood, mostly older folks and a couple younger couples. We all kind of know each other, at least by face. I figured maybe someone's car broke down or they needed help getting inside. I looked through the peephole. It was the guy from 2 doors down. I'd seen him a few times before, walking his dog, grabbing mail. We'd nodded a couple times but never talked. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. I don't even know his name. He didn't have a coat on, just a hoodie that was soaked through. His hair was dripping, and he kept glancing behind him, like he was expecting someone to come up the sidewalk after him. I opened the door just a little and kept the chain on. He leaned toward the crack. "I'm sorry," he said fast, like he'd been rehearsing it. "I'm sorry to bother you, but someone's following me. I've been walking around trying to lose him. He keeps ducking behind stuff." I didn't know where else to go. I stared at him for a second, then glanced out past him, toward the street. There was nobody out there. The street lamp by my driveway made this soft orange glow on the wet sidewalk, but it was completely empty. "You want me to call the cops?" I asked. He shook his head right away. No, can I come in for a minute? Just till I'm sure he's gone. Please. I've been walking in this for almost an hour. Something about the way he said that didn't feel right. He wasn't out of breath. He didn't look like someone who'd been walking for that long in the rain. He was wet, yeah, but there was no mud, no puddle marks on his pants. Just wet from the top down. Also, his story kept shifting. First he was walking to lose the guy, then suddenly he had no place else to go. I kept the door where it was. "You're saying someone's following you? From where?" He looked behind him again and stepped a little to the side, so I couldn't see him fully through the crack anymore. "I don't know. He's just been showing up on different streets. He's in a black jacket. Real thin. I saw him a few times behind trees or mailboxes, then he was gone." I didn't say anything. He leaned in again. "Please. I'm not crazy. I just didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go back to my place. If he saw me come in, he'd know where I live. Yours was the only one with lights on." It wasn't. My neighbor across the street, the couple with the 2 big dogs, always left their porch light on. And the old guy next door had his TV going loud most nights. You could hear it from outside. He passed both of their houses to get to mine. "I really think you should call the cops," I said. "If someone's stalking you or something." He stepped back, finally, and looked at me like I'd disappointed him. Not angry, just blank. "Right. Okay. Sorry." Then he turned and walked away, back into the rain. But he didn't go toward his house. He crossed the street and kept walking, not fast, not looking around like someone scared. Just calm, like he was going somewhere specific. I watched him disappear into the shadows between 2 street lamps, then closed the door. I didn't go to bed right away. I stayed on the couch, lights off now, just sitting there. After about 30 minutes, I peeked out through the front curtains. The street was still empty. But something had changed. The lid on my trash bin was open. Just barely. Not enough to blow open in the wind. It was tucked under the overhang of my garage. I hadn't opened it that day. I didn't check it till the morning. There was nothing inside but my trash. But the lid had fresh finger marks on it. Not smudges, actual prints. Someone with wet hands had pushed it up and let it fall back gently. The next day I worked from home. I kept an eye out for the neighbor. Around 1 p.m., I saw him walking down the sidewalk like normal. Dry, casual, earbuds in. He waved when he saw me through the window. I didn't wave back. I wanted to go ask the other neighbors if he'd knocked on their doors too, but something about it made me feel like I'd sound paranoid. That night, I double-checked all the locks, pulled the blinds, and turned on the backyard motion light. It stayed on for a while after I went to bed. Longer than usual. 2 nights later, it rained again. Lighter this time. I stayed up reading, trying not to think about that guy. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard a soft thud outside. Not like a bang, more like something setting down heavy on the porch. I froze. It came again a few seconds later, thump. I waited another minute before getting up and going to the peephole. There was no one there. But something was on the porch. A folded hoodie. Sopping wet, lying in the exact spot the guy had stood 3 nights earlier. I didn't open the door. I watched through the peephole for a while, expecting someone to come back for it. Nobody came. The next morning, it was gone. I avoided him after that. I didn't see him much anyway, but when I did, I turned the other way. He never came back to my porch. Nothing else happened for a few weeks. Then one afternoon I saw a police car parked in front of his house. 2 officers were at his door talking to someone. I couldn't see clearly, but it didn't look like him. It looked like a younger woman, maybe a relative. A few days later, I heard from the neighbor across the street that he'd left. Moved out. Apparently sold the house fast and quiet, barely told anyone. I asked if they knew why. She just shook her head and said, no idea. He was always kind of weird, though. Heard someone tried to break into a couple garages on this block around that time. Might have been related. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. The last weird thing, the part that sticks with me, happened about a month after he left. I was clearing some stuff out of my shed. It's not big, just a small aluminum one up back, mostly tools and gardening stuff. I hadn't been in there for a while. Probably since the fall. When I opened the door, I saw a wet footprint on the wood floor. Just one. Right in the middle. Facing the door. Like someone had stood there, barefoot and dripping, then left. Nothing was missing. Nothing was moved.